They say loyalty is everything. That if you stick with a company through the hard times, the company will stick with you when it counts. That if you keep your head down, do good work and say yes often enough, eventually someone will notice. That's the lie I believed for 8 years. I started working at Reveltech right out of college. It was a small, scrappy software firm with big ambitions and barely enough funding to pay us on time. My friends warned me I should take the more stable offer at a larger company, but I didn't want to be another cog in a corporate machine. I wanted to build something. I wanted to matter, and for a while I thought I did. I worked long hours, late nights, weekends, holidays. When servers crashed, I was the one logging in at 2 a.m. from my girlfriend's apartment to fix them. When clients asked for impossible turnarounds, I made it possible. My bosses praised my work ethic. My coworkers leaned on me constantly. I became the guy who can figure it out, the quiet engine that made everything run. But praise is not pay, and leaning on someone too long, eventually they fall. In my 4th year, we had a massive round of layoffs. I stayed, not because I was spared, but because I volunteered to take on 2 people's work to help the team adjust. I wasn't given a bonus or even a title change, just more responsibility. I told myself it was temporary, that they'd remember what I did when things got better. They didn't. Over the years, I became the go-to guy for everything technical, troubleshooting, deployment, back-end architecture, even onboarding new hires. And yet, I watched newer employees, some of whom I trained, get promoted over me. One of them even thanked me during his promotion speech. "Couldn't have done it without Ethan," he said. I smiled. Everyone clapped. And then I went back to my desk and fixed a server crash alone. Year 6, I was promised a raise. It was pushed, then pushed again. "Next quarter," they said. "You're a key part of our long-term plan." That quarter never came. In year 7, I led a team of 5 on a high-stakes product launch that pulled the company out of a slump. It was my design, my planning, my sleepless nights. At the company-wide celebration, the CEO congratulated the team. Then she turned and gave a special shout-out to Daniel, the 24-year-old I had mentored the year before. "Daniel showed amazing initiative and leadership," she said. Everyone clapped again. I stood in the back, holding a "You Rock" coffee mug they had handed out to the team. I didn't even get to speak. That night, I went home and stared at my living room wall for hours. Not in rage, but in revelation. I was never going to be seen as more than reliable. Reliable meant dependable. It meant I'd do the work no one wanted, without complaint, without reward, without recognition. Reliable was just another word for forgettable. The next morning, I walked into the office early, as always. But this time, I had a printed resignation letter in my bag. I wasn't scared. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. Because loyalty isn't loyalty when it's one-sided. It's just exploitation in a nicer font. I didn't expect a grand reaction when I handed in my resignation, but I got one anyway. "Wait, Ethan," my manager stammered, looking up from the paper like I just told him his house was on fire. "This is sudden." Sudden? I nearly laughed. I had been ignored, overworked, and overlooked for years. I had led projects, trained new hires, and even fixed a critical system bug during my vacation. But sure, to him, this was sudden. "What can we offer to keep you?" he asked, already typing into his phone. "More money? A title upgrade? Remote work options?" I paused, letting his desperation sit in the air for a moment. "You could have offered those things while I was still loyal," I said quietly. "Now it just feels like a bribe." He blinked, unsure how to respond. I picked up my mug, yes, the same "You Rock" mug they gave me, and left it on his desk. "I've already accepted another offer," I lied. Truth was, I had no offer. I had no backup plan. Just a resume that hadn't been touched in years, and a gut instinct that if I stayed one more week, I'd lose more than just pride. I'd lose myself. That afternoon, I walked out of Reveltech's office for the last time, with a box of my belongings and a strange cocktail of fear and freedom bubbling inside me. It was over, but the real challenge had just begun. The job hunt. Updating my resume was like cleaning out an attic full of dusty trophies no one had ever seen. I realized just how much I had done: system migrations, product launches, client rescue missions, training manuals, even internal tools that were still in use. Yet none of it had ever made it onto paper. No one had ever asked. Now I was asking myself, what is all this experience really worth? So I started applying. The first few interviews were brutal. Not because I wasn't qualified, but because I had forgotten how to talk about my own achievements. Every time they asked, "Tell me about a challenge you overcame," I defaulted to team answers. "Well, we had a situation." "No." One recruiter gently interrupted me. "Tell me what you did." And just like that, something shifted. The turning point. I started to rewrite my story, literally and mentally. I stopped framing my accomplishments as favors to a company and started owning them as results of my skills. I led a failing project across the finish line within 3 weeks. I automated half of our internal QA process, saving over 200 man-hours monthly. I mentored 5 junior developers, 3 of whom became team leads. Once I framed my history as value, not loyalty, I became dangerous. I had 5 interviews in 2 weeks, 3 second-round callbacks. 2 companies made offers, but one stood out. It was a mid-sized software firm called Lenora Systems, and they weren't just impressed by my experience, they valued it. In the second interview, their CTO said, "I'm surprised someone with your resume wasn't already in a senior leadership position. You were hidden in plain sight." He offered me the role of senior solutions architect. Remote first, stock options, 40% more than my old salary. I accepted, and this time I didn't just feel hired. I felt seen. My first day at Lenora Systems felt surreal. No grand onboarding process. No micromanaging supervisor breathing down my neck. Just a welcome email, a clean dashboard, and a message from the CTO that simply said, "We trust you. Let us know what you need." I sat there, staring at the screen, not quite knowing what to do with that level of trust. I had spent years being second-guessed, overchecked, and underutilized. Here, I was expected to lead, not be led. They assigned me to a product integration that had stalled for over 3 months. The internal team was stuck on conflicting code libraries and architecture decisions. Within a week, I had reviewed their frameworks, rewired their flow, and suggested a modular redesign that reduced future maintenance by over 60%. But what happened next was what shocked me most. They listened. They implemented my changes. And during the next sprint review, the team lead said, "Credit goes to Ethan for breaking us out of the loop. No stealing credit. No passive-aggressive thank you. Just acknowledgement." I wasn't used to it, but I could get used to it. A different culture. At Lenora, feedback wasn't a weapon. It was a conversation. When I proposed a system overhaul that would take 6 weeks but improve efficiency in the long run, the VP of engineering asked me detailed questions, not to undermine me but to understand. And when I presented the potential savings in time and resources, she simply said, "Run with it. Keep us updated." That kind of freedom? It unlocked something in me I didn't realize I'd buried. Creativity, innovation, confidence. I stayed late. Not because I was pressured, but because I wanted to. I took initiative not because I feared punishment, but because I trusted the process. I mentored new hires again, but this time they were being paid fairly and treated with respect, and so was I. I wasn't just a cog anymore. I was part of the design. The unexpected message. 3 months into the job, I got an email from my old company, Reveltech. From Daniel. Yes, that Daniel. The rising star. Subject: quick question. "Hey Ethan, hope you're doing well. Things have been kind of rough here since you left. Some of the systems you built are breaking down, and no one really understands them. We were wondering if you could jump on a quick call. Maybe walk us through a few things? Just a favor between old teammates." I stared at the message for a long time. I thought about the nights I gave them, the recognition I never got, the moments when I stayed silent while others claimed my work. And now, suddenly, I was valuable? I replied,
Y Daniel.
"Glad to hear from you. I no longer provide unpaid consultation. If Reveltech would like to discuss a formal engagement, My current hourly rate is attached. Best Ethan Clark.
No anger. No bitterness.
Just facts. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about finally knowing my worth and never giving it away for free again. By month 6 at Lenora Systems, I had led 2 successful product integrations, streamlined a development pipeline that was once infamous for bottlenecks, and mentored 3 new hires who were now functioning like seasoned pros. But that wasn't the part one was proudest of. The part that hit home? For the first time in my career, people asked for my opinion before something broke. It sounds small. But when you've spent years being the guy who only gets called when everything's on fire, being brought into planning meetings felt revolutionary. I wasn't just a technician anymore. I was a strategic asset. That realization changed the way I carried myself. I spoke up more in meetings. I started proposing features before I was asked. I even held a few internal lunch and learns to share optimization techniques, ones I had quietly used for years at my old job but never had a platform to present. And then came the real test, the internal shakeup. Our VP of engineering resigned unexpectedly. It shocked everyone. She had been with the company for nearly a decade, and her departure left a leadership vacuum. A week later, the CTO called me into a meeting. "Ethan," he said, "I won't beat around the bush. We've been impressed. You've stabilized 2 departments. You've earned the trust of the devs and the product leads. We're considering you for interim VP, possibly permanent if all goes well." I was stunned, not because I didn't think I could do the job, but because someone finally saw that I could. At Reveltech, I'd begged for a senior dev title for 3 years and got coffee mugs. At Lenora, I got a promotion offer I hadn't even asked for, just by being allowed to do what I was capable of. Still, I didn't say yes right away. Doubts and decisions. That night, I sat at home and stared at the offer email. VP. Executive-level decisions. Biggest salary I'd ever seen. And yet, a whisper in my mind said, "Is this what you want? Or are you just chasing validation again?" It was a valid question. The truth was, I'd finally found a place where I was respected, valued, and empowered. I didn't need a title to feel worthy anymore. But maybe, just maybe, this wasn't about chasing approval. Maybe it was about stepping into a role I had always been ready for, but never given the chance to prove. And this time, I'd get to shape the culture from the top, not just survive beneath it. The decision. I walked into the CTO's office the next morning. "I'll do it," I said, "but only on one condition." He raised an eyebrow. "I want full autonomy to revise how we promote internal talent. No more silent contributors being overlooked. If we're building the future here, I want to make sure we're building it right." He smiled. "Deal." Becoming VP of engineering wasn't just a change in title, it was a shift in perspective. I wasn't just building systems anymore. I was building people. And in a way, I was rebuilding myself, every quiet, overlooked part of me that had once accepted being invisible. My first act? I tore down the seniority model that rewarded politics over contribution. I implemented a transparent career ladder with defined milestones and regular reviews. Every team member now knew exactly what it took to move forward. No more empty promises. No more vague hang-in-there speeches. I created a mentorship program that paired junior devs with seasoned engineers. I pushed for fair compensation reviews every 6 months. And I insisted on one thing above all. No contribution goes unseen. 6 months into the role, employee satisfaction was up. Turnover was down. Productivity soared, not because people worked more, but because they felt like they mattered. And then one day it happened. The invitation. I received a LinkedIn message from a recruiter. Not just any recruiter, one working for Reveltech. "Hi Ethan. Hope you're doing well. Reveltech is currently restructuring our engineering leadership team. We're looking for someone with strong vision and cultural insight. We'd love to talk to you about a potential VP position." I read it twice. They were offering me the title now, after I had already earned it somewhere else. The same company that once handed me a coffee mug instead of a promotion. The same company that let others take credit for my work. Now they wanted my leadership to fix what they broke. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I printed out the message, pinned it to my corkboard, and wrote across it in Sharpie. Too late. The return on my terms. 3 weeks later, I spoke at a major tech conference. Topic: how to retain top talent you already have. I told my story, not naming names, but letting the audience read between the lines. I spoke about how companies chase unicorn hires while neglecting the quiet stars already burning inside their walls. I spoke about how I nearly lost my passion, not because I was incapable, but because I was invisible. And I ended with this: the cost of overlooking your best people isn't just losing them. It's building the kind of culture they'll one day compete against and win. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, a young developer approached me, eyes wide. I used to feel like you, like I didn't matter. But after hearing you speak, I'm going to start asking for what I'm worth. I shook his hand and smiled. Good. Don't wait 8 years like I did. Epilogue. Full circle. Today, I lead a department of 60 engineers. Not one of them is invisible. Not one of them is told to hang in there without a roadmap. And every time someone says, "Thanks for noticing," I remember what it felt like to never be noticed. My loyalty once got me nothing, but my self-respect, it built a legacy. And now, they're the ones sending messages. I'm the one who gets to decide which ones are worth answering.